In our Old Testament reading this morning, the psalmist praises God's faithfulness and asks for wisdom and happiness for the duration of their days. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. So teach us to count our days that we may gain a wise heart. Turn, O Lord, how long? Have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, so that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Our New Testament reading this morning comes from 1 Timothy. The epistle writer urges us to set our hopes on God rather than the uncertainty of riches. Of course, there is great gain in godliness combined with contentment, for we brought nothing into the world, so that we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with these. But those who want to be rich fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and in their eagerness to be rich, some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pains. As for those who in the present age are rich, command them not to be haughty, or to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but rather on God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. They are to do good and to be rich in good works, generous and ready to share, thus storing up for themselves the treasure of a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of the life that really is life.
Has anyone received a credit card offer this week? I thought so. They're very enticing, aren't they? Visa, it's where you want to be. Or there's always something more to discover with Discover Card. Or how about membership has its privileges? American Express, don't leave home without it. We don't even have to leave home. We don't even have to shower and dress. We can sit there in our jammies, and with the click of a mouse or the touch of a finger, we can have anything we want. Technology has made it way too easy to sink into debt. There was an article in U.S. News and World Report that said American dreams these days are built on hope, hard work, and often a mountain of debt. The American dream used to be having a job, a retirement plan, and a home in the suburbs. But these days, the economy is so unpredictable that we don't even know if we'll be able to keep a job or a home, let alone be able to retire. For those who want to be rich, there is great temptation. There is danger in that little phrase in 1 Timothy, the love of money. This verse gets quoted often as money is the root of all evil. But that's not what it says. It says the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, reminding us that when the pursuit of wealth becomes our priority, life can begin to unravel. It seemed that the love of money was a problem in the early church. This author's advice to a young Timothy begins with a word of caution to beware those who want to be rich, for they fall into temptation and are trapped by many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Or as New Testament scholar Carl Holliday put it, beware of those conceited ignoramuses fixated on stupid, meaningless controversies. This writer speaks some powerful words to the rich, cautioning them not to be haughty or arrogant because of their wealth, but rather to set their hopes on God. If we do that, then how do things get so out of hand? Some say it can be summed up in one word: greed. And that goes along with our addiction to instant gratification. We want it all, and we want it now. In our economy today, the uncertainty of riches is very relevant. Our text does not say that money or worldly goods are bad. Indeed, early Christianity owes much to wealthy benefactors. Both Jesus and Paul depended on such support. If poverty were a prerequisite for being a Christian, there would probably be a lot less of us. St. Francis took a vow of poverty, but we are not asked to do that. Timothy is not instructed to tell rich people they have to get rid of all their possessions. And when it comes to possessions, our stuff, remember, as George Carlin called it, we are all rich. In our Western culture, we are vulnerable to materialism. As Madonna sang, we are living in a material world. The problem is our attitude towards wealth. The text from 1 Timothy instructs us to put our wealth in perspective, to let generosity replace greed in our lives. William Willimon points out that greed blurs the lines between want and need, between desire and necessity, and raises the question of whether we possess our possessions or they possess us. It is one of the 7 deadly sins for a reason. And it is always easier to talk about when it belongs to someone else, right? We usually don't recognize our own greed. Like Ebenezer Scrooge, who blamed everyone else for his misery. He couldn't see that it was his own greed, and he was never happy until he learned to share his wealth to help others. Now this week, as you do every year around this time, you will be getting a letter about stewardship. Our scriptures today give us a sneak peek at our theme for this year, growing in generosity, based on 1 Timothy 6:18. Referring to those in the present age who are rich, they are to do good, to be rich in good works, generous, and ready to share. We all certainly have been blessed with an abundance of good things. Compared to those who live in abject poverty around the world and in our own country, even here in our own city, we are indeed wealthy. The psalmist reminds us who we are as God's people, that the Lord has been our dwelling place in all generations. We look back in gratitude for those who have gone before us, paving the way for our message of radical welcome, love, and acceptance that desperately needs to be heard in our world today. Because God has been with us, because family and friends encouraged faith in us and provided a church for us to call home, we have the opportunity to see that future generations have a church home. It is our 133rd year here on the corner of South and Elm. And we face the challenges of being church in a post-Christian culture and struggle to be relevant in an age where church has been defined as ultra-conservative, judgmental, and closed-minded. Too many have been hurt by churches that made them feel less than and denied them a place to fulfill their calling. A popular song of the last few years says, "You raise me up to more than I can be." What are you more than? It's a question the Council of Churches of the Ozarks has been asking this year in celebration of their 50th anniversary. I borrowed that slogan, #MoreThan, for the title of this sermon. Now, if you're not familiar with social media, a hashtag is what allows users to identify and find information on particular subjects. In this case, the subject is more than, and it has become a movement as hundreds of people throughout the Ozarks have signed on and committed to make a conscious effort to resist labeling others and see every person as a child of God, no matter their race, gender, socioeconomic standing, sexual orientation, or religious affiliation, and to stand up for others when social injustice is occurring around you. The hope is to turn around prejudice and stereotyping in our community and help swing the pendulum of poverty in the other direction. It is a movement to look past the labels placed on us by ourselves and others, a movement to see each other as more than what meets the eye. The early 20th century singer Margaret Young wrote, "Often people live their lives backwards. They try to have more things or more money in order to do more of what they want so they will be happier. The way it actually works is the reverse. You must first be who you really are, then do what you need to do in order to have what you really want. The writer of 1 Timothy offers an alternative way of living that leads to the life that really is life. He reminds us that while material wealth can provide us with many things, it cannot bring peace and inner contentment. I will share with you that today is an important day for me. On this day, 28 years ago, September 29th, 1991, I was ordained by the First Baptist Church of South Boston, Virginia. Yes, you heard that correctly. It was the day I became more than a choir director, more than a seminary student, more than a reluctant preacher. For me, it was what led to the life that really is life. I knew it was not going to be a life of wealth and privilege, yet it has been a rich life with many privileges. The privilege of serving a congregation such as South Street through all the seasons of church and individual life has enriched my life. True living, the life that really is life, isn't about what we own or how much money we have. Riches, as the author says, are uncertain. True living is not about storing up treasures on earth or in heaven. It is about living in community with others who share our values and passions. It is about sharing our abundance with our most vulnerable neighbors, the poor, the hungry, the homeless. Therein lies the richness we find, not only in contentment with what we have, but also in giving in ways that will help others. And so let us not set our hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God. Let us do good, be rich in good works, generous and ready to share, so that we may take hold of the life that really is life. Amen.